The mess hall of Coalition Station Harmony buzzed with the usual evening chatter. Soldiers from a dozen different species sat at long metal tables, eating their meals and sharing stories from their home worlds. The large viewing screen on the far wall displayed images from Earth's cultural database. Part of the mandatory integration program, meant to help different species understand each other better. Tonight, the screen showed human legends and myths: Vikings with horned helmets, Spartans in bronze armor, Mongol warriors on horseback. The images were colorful and dramatic, taken from human movies and entertainment media. At Table 7, a group of Kryn soldiers watched the screen and laughed. The Kryn were tall beings, with 4 arms and thick gray skin that could stop most small-caliber rounds. They were considered the backbone of Coalition military forces, proud of their strength and combat traditions. "Look at those tiny humans with their little swords," Sergeant Brocknell said, his voice loud enough for half the mess hall to hear. He pointed one of his 4 hands at the screen. "They expect us to believe these stories? Warriors who fought hundreds of enemies? Alone?" His companions laughed along with him. "Primitive fiction," another Kryn said. "My hatchlings tell more believable tales. 300 warriors holding a mountain pass against 1,000,000 enemies?" Brocknell continued. "Ridiculous. Humans always exaggerate. It's because they're so weak in reality. They need fantasy to feel strong." At a small table near the corner, Private Taemin sat alone with his meal tray. He was young for a human soldier, perhaps 25 Earth years, with short black hair and quiet eyes. He wore the standard Coalition Medical Corps uniform. As he ate, he kept his gaze down, not looking at the Kryn soldiers or the screen. The mockery continued. "And these Vikings," Brocknell said with another laugh. "They supposedly conquered half their world in wooden boats." "Wooden? We use quantum-reinforced hulls. And they're talking about wood." Several other alien species joined in the laughter. To most of them, humans were the newcomers, the species that had only joined the Coalition 30 years ago. They were small, fragile, with thin skin and weak bones. They had no natural armor, no claws, no venom. Most aliens couldn't understand why humans had even been accepted into the military branches. Taemin took another bite of his food. His hands were steady. Only someone looking closely would notice the old scars on his knuckles, or the precise, controlled way he moved. The mess hall doors opened, and Lieutenant J1 entered. He was taller than Taemin, perhaps 30 years old, with the bearing of someone who had seen combat. He wore the tactical officer uniform with several service ribbons on his chest. His eyes swept the room, taking in everything in a single glance. The laughter at Table 7 died down slightly. J1 was known for his professional conduct, but also for his cold, analytical stare that made even Kryn sergeants uncomfortable. He walked to the serving line, got his food, and then moved toward Taemin's table. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. Taemin looked up and nodded. "Please, sir." J1 sat down across from him. For a moment, neither spoke. The viewing screen continued its display, now showing images of samurai warriors. More fantasy. Brocknell's voice rang out again. He was clearly drunk on Kryn alcohol, emboldened by his audience. Humans, with their honor codes and their warrior spirits. If they were such great fighters, why did it take them so long to reach space? Why are they so weak now? R doubled. R doubled. Doubled. Some of the younger alien soldiers laughed nervously. Others stayed quiet. There was a tension in the room that the experienced soldiers could feel. J1 calmly continued eating his meal. Taemin did the same. Neither looked toward the Kryn table. "Hey, human!" Brocknell called out. Several soldiers turned to look. "You there, medic boy. Is it true? Are these legends real? Or just stories to make your kind feel better about being so soft?" The mess hall went quiet. Everyone was watching now. Taemin slowly set down his fork. He looked up, meeting Brocknell's gaze with calm, dark eyes. "They're just stories, Sergeant," he said softly. "Nothing to worry about. Thank you for watching. Weekend Dangly. Also. Weekend Dangly. Also fireman. Weekend Dangly." Bracknell laughed harder. "Nothing to worry about. Did you hear that? Even the humans admit it's all lies." Jaewon touched Taemin's arm gently, a subtle signal to stand down. Then he looked toward the Kryn table. "Sergeant Bracknell," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the room, despite being barely louder than normal conversation. "I recommend you focus on your meal. Night shift starts in 2 hours." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even harsh. But something in Jaewon's tone made several aliens uncomfortable. There was a weight to his words, an underlying current that spoke of things unsaid. Bracknell sneered but turned back to his companions. The conversation shifted to other topics. Gradually, the normal noise of the mess hall returned. Near the back of the room, Commander Velthar watched it all. He was Kryn like Bracknell, but older, with decorative scars marking 40 cycles of military service. He had commanded 3 different warships and was now in charge of Station Harmony's entire military complement. He noticed things others missed. The way Taemin's jaw clenched before answering, the complete stillness in Jaewon's posture, like a predator deciding whether to strike. The fact that both humans had positioned themselves with clear lines of sight to all exits. These were not the behaviors of soft, weak beings. Velthar had fought in 7 major battles. He had seen terror, courage, and death. He knew warriors when he saw them, and something about the human soldiers troubled him. They were too quiet, too controlled, too careful. After Jaewon and Taemin left the mess hall, Velthar remained sitting. He watched the screen continue its display of human legends. Vikings, Spartans, Mongols, samurai, all dismissed as fantasy by his soldiers. But Velthar had learned one thing in his 40 cycles of service. Every species told stories about their warriors, and those stories were usually based on something real. He pulled out his personal datapad and entered his command codes. The Coalition database opened before him. He navigated to the restricted sections, the ones that required high-level clearance. He typed, "Human Military History, Unrestricted Access." The screen flashed a warning. "This material contains disturbing content. Viewer discretion advised." Velthar dismissed the warning and began to read. 10 minutes later, his face had lost all color. His 4 hands trembled slightly. On the screen in front of him were statistics, battle records, and casualty numbers that defied belief. He kept reading, unable to stop, and slowly, a horrible understanding began to dawn on him. The legends weren't exaggerations. They were sanitized versions of something much, much worse. Commander Velthar did not sleep that night. He sat in his private quarters, his 4 eyes fixed on the datapad screen, reading through file after file of human military history. Each document made his blood run colder. The first records were from something humans called World War I. The numbers alone were staggering. Millions dead, millions more wounded, and the methods of warfare described in the reports seemed designed to maximize suffering. Trench warfare, where soldiers lived in mud for years, constantly under fire, poison gas that melted lungs, artillery barrages that lasted for days without stopping. He read about a battle called the Somme. On the first day alone, nearly 60,000 soldiers were killed or wounded. The first day. The battle continued for months. Velthar had to stop reading several times. In his worst combat experiences, he had lost maybe 200 soldiers in a single engagement. The humans lost tens of thousands, and simply continued fighting. He moved forward in the timeline. World War II. The casualty numbers made him feel sick. 70 million dead. Entire cities destroyed in single bombing raids. Industrial-scale death camps. 2 weapons that used atomic fission to vaporize 250,000 people. This can't be real, he whispered to himself. But the records were authenticated with coalition verification codes. Everything he was reading had been reviewed and confirmed by multiple independent sources. At 0400 hours, he could take no more. He sent a message to Dr. Minji, the civilian historian attached to the station. "I need to speak with you urgently. My office. 0700 hours. When morning came, Velthar felt exhausted despite not sleeping. He arrived at his office early and tried to prepare himself for the conversation ahead. Dr. Minji arrived exactly on time. She was a human woman in her 50s, with graying hair and gentle eyes. She wore civilian clothes and carried a datapad. When she entered, she bowed slightly in a gesture of respect. "Good morning, Commander. Your message said it was urgent?" Velthar gestured for her to sit. He noticed her glance at his datapad, still displaying human military records. Her expression changed slightly, becoming more guarded. "Dr. Minji," he began carefully. "I have been reviewing human historical records. I need you to help me understand what I'm reading." She was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed softly. "Which parts, Commander?" "All of it. Your wars, your casualties, your methods." He paused. "Are these records accurate?" "Yes," she said simply. "They are. But the legends," Velthar said, "the stories shown in the cultural database, they make your history seem like heroic fantasy. They don't mention any of this." He gestured at the screen. Minji nodded slowly. "That was intentional, Commander. When Earth applied for coalition membership, we were required to submit cultural materials for review. The Coalition Assessment Board decided that our true military history was too disturbing. They feared other species would refuse to work with us if they knew the details." "So you lied," Velthar said. "We edited," Minji corrected gently. "We showed the surface, the heroic sacrifices, the legendary battles. We didn't lie about them happening. We just didn't explain the context or the scale." Velthar activated his holographic display. "Explain this to me. The Somme, Verdun, Stalingrad. These battles lasted months. The casualties reached millions. How? Why?" Minji stood and approached the holographic display. She touched a few controls and pulled up a three-dimensional map of Earth. "Commander, humans evolved on a world with limited resources and countless competing groups. For most of our history, war was constant. We developed warfare into a science." She showed him images. Soldiers fighting in mud. Cities reduced to rubble. Bombers dropping explosives on civilian populations. "We practiced total war," she explained. "The idea that entire nations must be mobilized. Every factory, every farm, every citizen becomes part of the war effort. We didn't just fight armies. We fought entire societies." Velthar felt one of his hearts beating faster. "But the coalition principles prohibit attacks on civilian infrastructure. They prohibit weapons of mass destruction. They prohibit. We know." Minji interrupted softly. "That's why we agreed to follow coalition rules. We wanted to change. We were tired of what we had become." "Mine, too." The office doors opened, and Captain Hae-sung entered. He was a human male in his 40s, muscular and scarred, with the cold eyes of someone who had seen too much combat. He wore the intelligence officer uniform. "Doctor," he said with a nod. Then he looked at Velthar. "Commander, I heard you accessed restricted human files. I thought I should be present for this conversation." Velthar studied the captain carefully. "Your former special forces," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. 20 years in the Republic of Korea Special Warfare Command. Before that, conscripted service in the regular army." Hae-sung moved to stand beside Minji, looking at the holographic display. "I see you found our wars." "I found massacres," Velthar said quietly. "Industrial-scale killing. Methods of warfare that violate every standard of civilized conduct." Yes, Hae-sung agreed. That's what we were. Were? Velthar stood up from his desk. Captain, I watched Private Taemin last night. I watched Lieutenant J1. They move like predators. They position themselves tactically even in a mess hall. Hae-sung and Minji exchanged glances. Finally, the captain spoke. Taemin was special forces before his medical training. 3 combat tours. He has 47 confirmed kills. He retired at 23 due to psychological trauma. Velthar felt cold. He's 25 now. He's been a soldier since he was a child? Mandatory military service in his country starts at 18, Hae-sung explained. He volunteered for special forces at 19. By 21, he was leading missions behind enemy lines. By 23, he couldn't sleep without medication. He joined the coalition, hoping to leave violence behind. And J1? Naval Special Warfare. 12 years. I trained him personally. Hae-sung's voice was flat, emotionless. He's one of the most effective combat officers I've ever known. Also one of the most damaged. Velthar sat down heavily. Every human on this station is a volunteer, yes? You all chose to join the coalition military? Yes. Minji said. We could have stayed on Earth. We chose to serve here. Instead. Why? There was a long silence. Finally, Hae-sung spoke, his voice softer than before. Because we're tired, Commander. Tired of fighting. Tired of killing. Tired of being good at it. The coalition offered us something we never had before. A chance to be something other than warriors. Velthar looked at the holographic display still showing Earth's wars. Your species frightens me, Captain. These records frighten me. The fact that you consider this your peaceful era terrifies me. We frighten ourselves, sir, Hae-sung said quietly. That's why we're here. Before Velthar could respond, the station's alarm system activated. Red lights flashed throughout the office. An automated voice announced, Alert. Multiple hostile vessels detected. All military personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. The 3 of them looked at each other. Then they ran for the command center. As they sprinted through the corridors, Velthar couldn't shake one thought from his mind. He was about to see what humans were really capable of, and he wasn't sure he wanted to know. The command center was chaos when Velthar arrived. Officers from multiple species crowded around holographic displays showing the approaching threat. 5 warships, all bearing the markings of the Krigoth pirate clan. They were closing fast on the station's position. Status report, Velthar commanded, as he took his position at the center console. 5 heavy cruisers, Commander. The tactical officer replied. They're demanding immediate surrender. They want our cargo holds. And they're threatening to destroy the station if we resist. Velthar studied the displays. The pirate ships were old, but well armed. His own station had defensive weapons, but they were designed to hold off raiders until reinforcements arrived. Against 5 cruisers, they would last maybe 20 minutes. Where is our support fleet? He asked. 3 days away at minimum, sir. They're engaged in operations in the Outer Rim. Sergeant Broknall stepped forward, his 4 hands gesturing frantically. Commander. Coalition protocol states that when outnumbered and outgunned, preservation of life takes priority. We should. No. A quiet voice said. Everyone turned. Lieutenant J1 stood near the entrance to the command center. Behind him were a dozen human soldiers, including Private Taemin and Corporal Hyun-woo, the station's weapons specialist. What did you say, Lieutenant? Broknall demanded. J1 walked forward calmly. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes had changed. They were colder now, calculating. I said no, Sergeant. We will not surrender this station. You have no authority here, Broknall said. Commander, tell him. Velthar held up one hand for silence. He looked at J1 carefully. Lieutenant, what are you suggesting? 1. Give us authorization to handle this situation, J1 said. The human way. The command center went silent. Everyone remembered the cultural files, the legends that were supposedly exaggerated. Velthar thought about what he had read just hours before. The real history. The methods humans had actually used in warfare. What exactly would that involve? Velthar asked slowly. Sir, I cannot give you details without authorization. But I can tell you that we will hold this station. The pirates will not take it. They will not harm anyone aboard. But we will have to operate outside coalition engagement protocols. Captain Hae-sung entered the command center. He moved to stand beside J1. Commander, I take full responsibility. But Lieutenant J1 is correct. We can defend this station. We have the training and the capability. We just need you to let us do what we do best. Velthar looked around the command center. He saw fear on the faces of his alien crew. They were good soldiers, trained in coalition methods, but coalition methods were based on honorable warfare, clear rules, and the assumption that both sides valued life. The pirates approaching them did not follow those rules, and based on what he had learned, neither did humans. How long do we have before they arrive? Velthar asked. 20 minutes, sir. The tactical officer replied. Velthar made his decision. He looked directly at J1 and spoke one word: unleashed. J1's face didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. He turned to the human soldiers behind him. You heard the commander. Full authorization. Taemin, organize medical. Hyunwoo, weapons prep. Everyone else, you know what to do. The humans moved immediately. There was no hesitation, no discussion. They simply transformed from calm, professional soldiers into something else. Something focused and predatory. Taemin walked past Velthar and began issuing orders to the medical staff. His voice was quiet but absolute. Clear sections 3 through 7. Set up triage in the inner corridors. Prepare for combat casualties. This is not a drill. Move now. Corporal Hyun-woo approached the station's weapons locker. He began pulling out standard coalition equipment, studying each piece with a critical eye. Then he started opening storage crates and examining their contents. Spare parts, tools, industrial chemicals. What is he doing? Broknal asked nervously. Captain Hae-sung watched Hyun-woo work. Making weapons. Real weapons. But those are just station supplies, another officer protested. Everything is a weapon if you know how to use it, Hae-sung said quietly. Humans learned that lesson early in our history. J1 moved to the tactical display and began analyzing the station's layout. He spoke rapidly, giving orders to human and alien soldiers alike. Seal bulkheads, here, here, and here. Leave these corridors open. Position fire teams at these intersections. No, not straight lines. Angled. Create crossfire zones. But that violates defensive doctrine, a Kryn officer said. Those positions leave us vulnerable to flanking. Exactly, J1 said. We want them to flank us. We want them to think they're winning. Velthar watched in growing unease. The humans weren't preparing to defend the station. They were preparing a trap. The pirates arrived exactly on schedule. Their ships took up positions surrounding the station and began their assault. Boarding pods launched, carrying armed raiders directly to the station's hull. They're breaching sections 4, 6, and 9. The tactical officer reported. Good, J1 said. The alien crew members stared at him in shock. Let them in? The first wave of pirates entered the station through the breached sections. They were Krieg-Oth warriors, large reptilian beings with natural armor and plasma weapons. They moved confidently, expecting minimal resistance. They found empty corridors. Where is everyone? One pirate radioed to his commander. This section is deserted. As he spoke, a small device rolled into the corridor behind them. It was made from spare parts and chemical compounds. Hyun-woo's work. The explosion was not large. It didn't need to be. It sealed the corridor behind the pirates, trapping them in the section. Then the lights went out. In the command center, everyone listened to the radio transmissions from the pirate teams. Confident chatter turned to confusion. Confusion turned to nervousness. Then came the screaming. The humans had divided the station into kill zones. Each section was isolated. The pirates separated into small groups. And in the darkness, the human soldiers moved. They didn't fight fair. They didn't announce themselves. They used tactics from centuries of human warfare: ambushes, booby traps, psychological warfare. They attacked from shadows and disappeared before the pirates could return fire. Taemin moved through the corridors like a ghost. His medical training let him know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. He found a group of 3 pirates trying to navigate in the dark. His knife work was silent and efficient. None of them had time to scream. Hyun Woo had rigged entire sections with improvised explosives. When pirates tried to move through them, he triggered the charges remotely. The station's structure remained intact, but the invaders were shredded. Jae-won coordinated everything from the command center, his voice calm as he directed human soldiers to where pirates were vulnerable. He didn't command like a coalition officer. He commanded like someone who had spent years studying how to kill efficiently. On the pirate command ship, Krigoth watched his forces disappear one by one on his tactical display. "What's happening?" he roared. "Where are my warriors?" "I don't know, sir. They're just gone." We hear weapons fire. Then nothing. This was supposed to be an easy raid. 30 minutes after the boarding began, the pirate leader made his decision. "Pull back. All teams, return to the ships immediately. We're leaving," but retreating was harder than entering. The humans had sealed most of the exit routes. The pirates had to fight their way out through prepared ambush positions. Many didn't make it. When the pirate ships finally disengaged and fled into FTL, they left behind nearly half their forces, dead or captured. The station was secure. In the command center, Velthar looked at the casualty reports. 57 pirates dead, 23 wounded and captured. On the coalition side, 2 minor injuries, both from accidents, not combat. The human soldiers returned to the command center. They were covered in blood, some of it their own, most of it not. They moved calmly, cleaning their weapons and checking their equipment. The other species aboard the station pressed themselves against the walls, afraid to get too close. Taemin walked past, his gentle face now spattered with blood. He nodded politely to Velthar. "We'll need to file incident reports, Commander." Jae-won approached and handed over a datapad. "After action summary, sir. All hostile forces eliminated or captured. Station secure. No civilian casualties." Velthar took the pad with a shaking hand. He looked at the young lieutenant and realized something horrifying. This was humans being gentle. This was them holding back. The station felt different after the battle. The corridors were clean, the damage repaired, the blood washed away. But something had changed that couldn't be fixed with tools and cleaning supplies. The human soldiers worked methodically in the hours after the pirate retreat. They collected weapons, secured prisoners, and wrote their reports. They moved with the same calm efficiency they showed before the fighting, but now everyone aboard the station watched them with different eyes. Private Taemin sat in the medical bay, cleaning his equipment. His hands moved with practiced precision, disassembling and cleaning each tool. The scalpel, the trauma shears, the combat knife he had used in the dark corridors. He hummed softly as he worked, a gentle tune from his childhood. A young alien medic approached him hesitantly. "Private Taemin, I wanted to thank you. You saved my life during the attack." Taemin looked up and smiled warmly. "Just doing my job. Are you hurt?" "No. I'm fine. But I saw you fight. You moved so fast. And the way you handled those pirates." The young medic trailed off, fear creeping into his voice. Taemin's smile faded slightly. He set down his knife and looked at his hands. "I'm sorry you had to see that. It's not who I want to be anymore." The young medic backed away slowly and left the medical bay. Taemin returned to his cleaning, now humming a sadder song. In the prisoner holding area, Corporal Hyun-woo oversaw the captured pirates. He stood outside their cells, arms crossed, watching them with cold eyes. The pirates huddled in the corners of their cells, as far from him as possible. One of the Krieg-Oth prisoners spoke up. "You fight without honor. You hide in shadows and use tricks. You are cowards." Hyun-woo walked closer to the cell. He spoke in a flat, emotionless voice. "Honor doesn't win wars. It just makes you predictable. We learned that lesson thousands of years ago." "You are monsters," the pirate spat. "Yes," Hyun-woo agreed simply. "We are. That's why we try not to fight anymore." The pirate had no response to that. In the station's main corridor, groups of alien soldiers gathered in small clusters, speaking in low voices. They had all heard what happened. Some had witnessed it directly. The stories spread quickly through the crew. Sergeant Broknall walked alone, his forearms hanging loosely at his sides. He looked shaken, his usual arrogance completely gone. He approached Commander Veltar's office and requested entry. "Commander," he said when the door opened, "I wish to formally request transfer to another posting." Veltar studied him for a long moment. "Because of the humans? I cannot serve alongside them, sir. What they did, how they fought, it was not civilized. It was not warfare, as the Coalition teaches. It was slaughter. It was effective," Velthar said quietly. "It was terrifying." Broknall's voice rose. "I have fought in 3 campaigns, Commander. I have seen combat. But I have never seen anything like what those humans did. They enjoyed it. They smiled while they killed." "Did they?" Velthar asked. "Did you actually see them smile?" Broknall paused. "No," he admitted. "Their faces were empty. Like machines. That was almost worse." Velthar stood from his desk and walked to the window overlooking the station's docking bay. "Your transfer request is denied, Sergeant. You will remain at this posting, and you will learn to understand what you witnessed." "Sir." "I." Dismissed. Broknall left, looking defeated. Later that evening, Velthar called Taemin to his office privately. The young medic arrived still in his medical uniform, now clean and fresh. He stood at attention, waiting. "Sit down, Private," Velthar said gently. Taemin sat, his posture perfect, his face neutral. "I need to understand something," Velthar began. "The records I read about human warfare were disturbing, but they were history. Old conflicts. I thought perhaps humans had evolved past that violence. But today, I saw it was not history. It was just dormant." Taemin nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." "Tell me who you really are, Private. Not your rank, not your assignment. Who are you?" There was a long silence. Taemin looked down at his hands, the same hands that had healed patients and killed enemies in the same day. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet. "My name is Kim Taemin. I was born in Busan, Earth. I enlisted at 18 because military service is required in my country. I was good at it. Too good. They noticed and recruited me for Special Forces training." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I did 3 tours of combat duty. Urban warfare mostly, counterinsurgency, hostage rescue, things that required precision and close quarters killing. I was very good at it. I received commendations, promotions. But by my 3rd tour, I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't look at myself in mirrors." "Post-traumatic stress," Velthar said. "Yes. I retired at 23 with full honors. I thought I would go home and be a farmer like my grandfather. But I couldn't adjust to civilian life. Everything felt wrong. Too quiet. Too safe. I joined the Coalition because I thought maybe I could use my skills to help people instead of hurt them. I trained as a medic. I thought if I saved enough lives, it would balance out the ones I took. And today? Velthar asked gently. When you fought? Taemin's hands clenched into fists. Today, I remembered why I'm good at killing, and I hate myself for it. A. Velthar reached across the desk and placed one of his large hands over Taemin's smaller one. Private, let me ask you something. When you fought today, did you kill anyone who wasn't actively threatening this station? No, sir. Did you use excessive force? No, sir. We used precisely the amount of force needed to neutralize the threat. Did you take any pleasure in it? Taemin looked up sharply. No. Never. It was necessary, but I didn't enjoy it. Then why do you hate yourself? Taemin struggled with the answer. Because I'm so good at it. Sir. Because it came so naturally. Because for those 30 minutes, I wasn't thinking about peace or healing. I was thinking about efficiency and kill zones and how to stop the enemy permanently. That's not who I want to be. Velthar leaned back in his chair. I think I'm beginning to understand humans now. You're not warriors who learned peace. You're warriors who chose peace despite being built for war. That's very different. Yes, sir. One more question, Private. If this station is threatened again. Taemin met his eyes directly. Yes, sir. I will. Because these people are my responsibility. Because I have the ability to protect them. And that means I have the obligation to do so. But I'll hate every second of it. Good, Velthar said. That's the correct answer. Dismissed. After Taemin left, Velthar sat alone in his office. He pulled up the station's personnel files and looked through the human contingent. 23 humans assigned to Station Harmony. Every single one had combat experience. Every single one had chosen to leave Earth and serve in the coalition military. They were all running from something. Or perhaps they were running toward something. A chance to be different. A chance to use their skills for protection instead of destruction. Dr. Minji had been right. Humans were tired. Tired of being good at killing. Tired of their own nature. Velthar made a decision. Tomorrow he would call a mandatory assembly. Every member of the station's crew would attend. It was time to stop hiding the truth. It was time everyone understood what humans really were, and why they deserved respect rather than mockery. But first, he needed to make one more call. He activated his secure communication channel and contacted Coalition Command. The conversation lasted an hour. When it ended, Velthar had permission for what he was about to do. He would reveal everything, and he would make sure the galaxy understood. Humans weren't weak. They were warriors in recovery, choosing peace, one difficult day at a time. That choice deserved honor. The main assembly hall was packed. Every soldier, technician, and civilian aboard Station Harmony had been ordered to attend. The room buzzed with nervous conversation. Everyone knew something important was about to happen, but nobody knew exactly what. Commander Velthar stood on the raised platform at the front of the hall. Behind him, the large view screen displayed the coalition symbol. To his right stood Captain Hae Sung and Dr. Minji. To his left, Lieutenant Jae-won and the other human officers. The human contingent sat together in the front rows. They looked calm but tense, unsure what was coming. Velthar raised one of his 4 hands and the room fell silent. 3 days ago, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. Several members of this crew mocked human cultural materials. They laughed at human legends and called them primitive fantasy. Sergeant Broknall shifted uncomfortably in his seat. 2 days ago, Velthar continued, I decided to investigate these legends myself. I accessed restricted human historical files. What I found disturbed me deeply. He paused, looking around the room at the assembled crew. Yesterday, our station was attacked by pirates. We were outnumbered and outgunned. By coalition protocol, we should have surrendered. Instead, Our human soldiers defended us using methods that terrified many of you. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Several alien soldiers nodded in agreement. Today, I am going to show you the truth. The complete truth. About what humans are, where they come from, and why they deserve our respect rather than our mockery. Velthar gestured, and the view screen changed. It now showed a blue and green planet, rotating slowly. Earth. This is the human home world. It appears peaceful from orbit, beautiful even. But this world has a secret. For most of human history, this planet was a battlefield. The screen changed to show a map of Earth covered in markers. Red dots appeared everywhere. Thousands upon thousands of them. Each red marker represents a major military conflict in recorded human history. There are over 15,000 documented wars on this planet. The humans evolved in constant warfare. It shaped everything about them. Velthar pulled up images of ancient human warfare. Soldiers with bronze weapons, cavalry charges, siege weapons. The legends we mocked were real. 300 Spartans really did hold a mountain pass against a massive army, not because the story was exaggerated, but because humans learned early that death in battle was preferable to surrender. They fought to the last soldier as a matter of routine. He showed more images. Viking longships, Mongol hordes, samurai warriors. These warriors conquered vast territories using nothing but pre-industrial technology and absolute tactical ruthlessness. The Vikings crossed oceans in wooden boats and terrorized entire continents. The Mongols built the largest land empire in history using horses and bows. These aren't myths. They're documented history. 10. The crowd was silent now, staring at the screen. But that was ancient history, Velthar said. Surely humans evolved past such barbarism? The screen changed again. Now it showed trenches filled with soldiers, mud everywhere, bodies lying in no man's land. This is World War I. Humans fought this war with industrial technology. The result was mechanized slaughter on a scale never seen before. In a single battle called the Somme, 60,000 soldiers died on the first day. The battle continued for months. Total casualties exceeded 1 million. 2020. 2020. 1 million. 2020. Gasps spread through the audience. That was just one battle, Velthar said quietly. World War I lasted 4 years. 10 million soldiers died. 20 million were wounded. And when it ended, humans did not learn peace. 20 years later, they started an even bigger war. The screen showed cities in ruins, bombers overhead, mushroom clouds rising. World War II killed 70 million people. Humans developed weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. They used them. They developed industrial methods of genocide. They used those too. They fought on every continent, in every ocean, in the air, and under the sea. Total war. Velthar let the images speak for themselves. The audience watched in horror. After World War II, humans developed weapons that could destroy their entire planet. Nuclear weapons. Enough to kill every living thing on Earth, multiple times over. And then, they built more. Thousands of them. They pointed them at each other and called it peace. He pulled up statistics and graphs showing Earth's military history. Here is what you need to understand. Humans have been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. 10,000 years of constant conflict. They developed warfare into a science. Strategy, tactics, logistics, psychological operations. They studied how to kill efficiently the same way other species study art or mathematics. Captain Haesung stepped forward to speak. Commander, may I? Velthar nodded and stepped aside. Haesung faced the audience. Everything Commander Velthar showed you is true. We are a species built for warfare. We have opposable thumbs to grip weapons. We have endurance to chase prey for days. We have intelligence to plan complex operations. We have social structures that allow massive coordination. And we have something else. The capacity for extreme violence when threatened. He gestured to the human soldiers in the front rows. Every human on this station is a volunteer. We could have stayed on Earth in comfortable, peaceful lives. We chose to come here instead. Do you know why? Why? Do you know why? The audience waited. Because we're tired. Haesung said simply. Tired of killing. Tired of war. Tired of being good at it. When the Coalition offered humanity membership, they gave us something we never had before. A chance to be something other than warriors. Lieutenant Jaewon stood up. The Coalition has rules about warfare. Rules we find strange and sometimes inefficient. But we follow them because we want to prove we can fight honorably. We want to show that humans can choose a different path. Private Taemin stood next. Yesterday, when we defended this station, we did things that frightened you. We used tactics from our history. Ambushes. Traps. Psychological warfare. We fought in ways that violated Coalition standards of honorable combat. But we did it to protect you. To protect everyone on this station. We didn't want to fight that way. But we could, so we did. Dr. Minji stepped forward. The cultural materials shown in the database were edited. Not to deceive you, but to make human history palatable to other species. The Coalition Assessment Board decided that if other races knew the full truth about human warfare, they would refuse to work with us. They would see us as monsters. She looked around the room, and perhaps they would be right. We were monsters. We did monstrous things. We killed millions of each other. Over resources, territory, ideology, religion. We invented concepts like total war and mutually assured destruction. We created weapons designed specifically to maximize suffering. Her voice grew softer but more intense. But we also created something else. We created the idea of rules in warfare. Treaties to protect prisoners and civilians. Agreements to limit certain weapons. War crimes, tribunals to punish those who went too far. We invented these concepts because we needed to limit ourselves, because we knew what we were capable of becoming. Velthar stepped forward again. What I'm trying to make you understand is this. The humans on this station are not weak. They are warriors who have chosen peace. Every day they work beside us. They are fighting their own nature. Fighting thousands of years of evolution and cultural conditioning. Fighting instincts that tell them to dominate and conquer. He walked down from the platform and approached Sergeant Broknall directly. Sergeant, 3 days ago you called humans soft and weak. You mocked their legends. Do you still believe that? Broknall stood slowly. He looked at the humans sitting nearby. He saw Taemin, the quiet medic who had killed multiple armed pirates with his bare hands. He saw Jae-won, who had coordinated a defense that slaughtered dozens of raiders without losing a single Coalition life. No, Commander, Broknall said. I don't believe that anymore. He turned to face Taemin. Private, I owe you an apology. I called you soft. I questioned your courage. I was wrong. You are stronger than I could ever be. Not because you can fight, but because you choose not to. Taemin stood and bowed respectfully. Apology accepted, Sergeant. Broknall bowed back, a gesture of respect among the Kryn people. The view screen changed one final time. Now, it showed a live transmission. Admiral Thex Ran, the Kryn leader of Coalition Fleet Command, appeared on the screen. Attention, Station Harmony personnel. The Admiral said. Commander Velthar has informed me of recent events. I authorized this assembly because the crew deserves to know the truth. The Admiral's expression was serious. When Earth applied for Coalition membership 30 years ago, the assessment board was deeply divided. Some members wanted to reject humanity outright. They had reviewed Earth's history and were terrified by what they found. Others argued that any species capable of such violence, who then chose peace, deserved a chance. He paused. The compromise was to admit humans but to restrict knowledge of their true history. We believed that if other species knew the full extent of human capability for warfare, it would create fear and division. We thought we were protecting the coalition. We were wrong. Admiral Thexron looked directly at the camera. Humans are not weak. They are not primitive. They are reformed warriors. Every human in coalition service has chosen to follow our rules, to fight with honor, to protect rather than destroy. They could have stayed on their violent world and continued their wars. They chose to reach for something better. The Admiral's voice grew stronger. I am issuing a new directive to all coalition forces. Human military history will no longer be classified. Any species that serves alongside humans has the right to know what they are, not to fear them, but to understand them, to respect the choice they make every day, to be peaceful warriors. The transmission ended. The assembly hall was completely silent. Velthar looked around at his crew. I called this assembly for 2 reasons. First, to apologize to our human soldiers for allowing ignorance and mockery to create a hostile environment. You deserved better. Ath, the human contingent, nodded in acknowledgement. Second, to make sure everyone understands. We are stronger because humans serve among us, not weaker. They bring skills and experience that have saved lives. Yesterday, they saved this entire station. They will continue to serve with honor as long as we treat them with the respect they've earned. He gestured for everyone to stand. From this day forward, any member of this crew who mocks, insults, or discriminates against humans will answer directly to me. We are one coalition, one crew. We stand together. The assembly erupted in applause. It started slow but built quickly. Alien soldiers stood and clapped. Some approached the human contingent and offered gestures of respect appropriate to their species. Sergeant Brocknall approached the human section and stopped in front of the group. I would be honored to learn from you, he said formally, to understand how you became such effective warriors. Captain Haesung smiled sadly. We can teach you tactics and strategy, Sergeant. But I hope you never have to learn the most important lesson: how to live with what you've done in war. That's the hardest skill humans ever developed. Later that evening, the mess hall was crowded again. But this time, humans and aliens sat together at the same tables. The view screen still showed human cultural materials. But now it also showed the true history. The wars, the casualties, the weapons, the truth. A young alien recruit approached Taemin's table hesitantly. Private? I was wondering if you could tell me about Earth. About what it's really like to be human. Taemin gestured to the empty seat beside him. Sit down. I'll tell you a story about my grandfather. He was a farmer who lived through 3 wars. He taught me that the strongest warriors are those who know when not to fight. As the evening continued, more conversations started. Aliens asking questions. Humans answering honestly. Barriers breaking down. Understanding, growing. Commander Velthar watched from his usual corner table. Dr. Minji joined him, carrying 2 cups of tea. You did a good thing today, Commander, she said. I revealed a truth that was hidden for 30 years. Velthar replied. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. It's honest, Minji said. And that's better than good. Lies protect no one. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the crew interact. Can I ask you something, Doctor? Velthar said. Do you think humans will ever stop being warriors? Will you ever truly be at peace with your nature? Minji considered the question carefully. I don't know, Commander. We're trying. Every day, every human in coalition service is trying to prove we can be something different. Maybe someday we'll succeed. Or maybe we'll always be warriors who choose peace. Either way, we'll keep trying. That's all anyone can ask, Velthar said. At the entrance to the mess hall, 2 new recruits arrived, fresh from the transport ship. They were young aliens who hadn't heard about the recent events. They looked at the humans sitting among the crew, and one started to laugh. Look at those small Velthar stood up immediately. His voice carried across the entire mess hall, silencing all conversation. "Let me tell you about our human friends," he said, walking toward the new recruits. "Let me tell you why they deserve your respect. Sit down. This will take a while." As Velthar began to speak, the entire crew listened. Even those who had heard it before wanted to hear it again. The story of the warriors who chose peace. The story of humans. And in that moment, Station Harmony truly lived up to its name.